The spreadsheet numbers blurred together as I rubbed my tired eyes, the harsh fluorescence of the back office doing nothing to help the headache building behind my temples. 10 o'clock at night, and I was still here, reconciling accounts that never quite balanced, chasing down receipts for expenses that seemed designed to confuse rather than clarify. 3 years. 3 years I'd been the invisible accountant tucked away in the basement office of Impero, the most exclusive nightclub in Chicago. 3 years of processing payroll, managing invoices, and pretending not to notice when certain transactions required creative categorization. 3 years of being so unremarkable, so forgettable, that most of the staff didn't even know my name. And that was exactly how I preferred it. I was good at being invisible. I'd perfected the art over 26 years of life. Mousy brown hair, always pulled back in a severe bun, oversized cardigans that hid my figure, glasses I didn't actually need but wore anyway because they made people's eyes slide right past me. In a world of beautiful people who sparkled and shone, I was deliberately dull, a shadow in the corner that no one bothered to look at twice. It was safer that way. My fingers flew across the keyboard, entering another series of numbers when footsteps echoed down the hallway outside my office. Heavy, purposeful footsteps that made my body tense automatically. I knew those footsteps. Dante Moretti, the owner of Impero, though everyone knew the nightclub was just the legitimate face of a much darker empire. At 34, he'd built a criminal organization that controlled half of Chicago's underground, all while maintaining the facade of a successful businessman. Restaurants, nightclubs, real estate, all of it clean on the surface, all of it hiding something far more dangerous beneath. I'd seen him exactly 4 times in 3 years, twice from a distance as he moved through the club with his security detail, once when he'd walked past my open office door without a single glance in my direction, and once during my initial interview when his cold gray eyes had assessed me for approximately 30 seconds before nodding to his HR manager that I was acceptable. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The footsteps paused outside my door. My heart hammered against my ribs as I kept my eyes fixed on my computer screen, every muscle in my body rigid with the hope that he would keep walking, that whatever business brought Dante Moretti to the administrative wing at this hour had nothing to do with me. The door opened. I didn't look up immediately, buying myself a few seconds to compose my features into the bland, forgettable expression I'd mastered. When I finally raised my eyes, careful to look at a point just past his shoulder rather than directly at him, my breath caught despite my best efforts. Dante Moretti was beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful, all sharp edges and deadly grace. Tall, at least 6'3", with dark hair that fell just slightly too long, as if he couldn't be bothered with regular haircuts. A strong jaw shadowed with stubble that was probably calculated to look carelessly masculine, and those eyes, cold, assessing gray eyes that seemed to see through everything they touched. Tonight he wore a black suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months, the jacket open over a charcoal shirt with no tie. There was blood on his knuckles, fresh blood that he hadn't bothered to wipe away. Miss Chen. His voice was deep, smooth, with just a hint of gravel that suggested he'd been shouting, or threatening, working late. It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway, my throat too tight to form words. This was wrong. Dante Moretti didn't acknowledge people like me, didn't learn the names of the invisible staff who kept his legitimate businesses running while he focused on his less legal enterprises. I need the books for Bellissimo. He stepped into my small office, his presence immediately making the space feel claustrophobic. Everything from the past 6 months. Bellissimo was his flagship restaurant, an upscale Italian place in the Loop that catered to politicians and celebrities. It was also, I suspected, one of his primary money laundering operations, though I'd never found concrete proof in the carefully maintained accounts. Of course, Mr. Moretti. I kept my voice steady, professional, as unremarkable as everything else about me. I can have them ready by tomorrow afternoon, now. He leaned against the doorframe, those gray eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. I need them now. My mind raced. It was after 10 on a Friday night, pulling 6 months of detailed records, compiling them in a presentable format that was hours of work. But you didn't tell Dante. Moretti, no. You certainly didn't explain that his request was unreasonable or that you had plans. Not that I had plans. I never had plans. Yes, sir. It'll take me about 2 hours to compile everything properly. Something flickered in his expression's surprise. Maybe that I hadn't argued or made excuses. Fine, I'll wait. And then he did something that made my heart stop. He walked into my office, pulled out the rickety chair I kept for the rare occasions when someone needed to discuss accounts with me, and sat down. Right there, 3 feet away from my desk, waiting. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened the necessary files, pulling up transaction records and export reports. I could feel his eyes on me, studying me in a way that made me want to squirm in my seat. No one looked at me like this. No one looked at me at all. "How long have you worked here?" he asked, after several minutes of silence. 3 years, Mr. Moretti. I didn't look up from my screen, focusing intently on the numbers that were becoming increasingly difficult to read with my pulse pounding in my ears. 3 years. He repeated it thoughtfully, as if testing the words. "And in 3 years, I've never noticed you." There was something in his tone, not quite accusation, not quite curiosity. More like a man discovering an oversight in his carefully controlled world and finding it unacceptable. "I prefer to work behind the scenes, sir. It allows me to focus on accuracy. Behind the scenes." A soft laugh that held no humor. "Is that what we're calling it?" I risked a glance at him, immediately regretting it when those gray eyes locked onto mine. There was something predatory in his gaze, something that suggested he was seeing me, truly seeing me for the first time and finding the experience unsettling. "What's your first name, Miss Chen?" The question threw me. "Sophia. Sophia." The way he said it, testing it on his tongue, made something flutter in my stomach that I immediately tried to suppress. "You handle all the books for my legitimate businesses?" "Yes, sir. Impero, Bellissimo, the 3 other restaurants, the 2 clubs in Wicker Park, and the real estate holdings portfolio." His eyebrows rose slightly. "That's a lot of responsibility for one person." I shrugged, turning back to my computer. "I'm efficient. Clearly." He fell silent again, but I could still feel the weight of his attention. "The transaction records you categorize everything personally?" "Yes, sir." "And you never ask questions about the more unusual transactions?" My fingers paused on the keyboard. This was dangerous territory. I'd survived 3 years by being deliberately blind to the inconsistencies in the books, by processing the numbers without ever connecting them to the reality of what they represented. "I'm an accountant, Mr. Moretti. My job is to ensure the numbers are accurate and properly documented, not to question where they come from." Smart answer. There was approval in his voice now, and something else I couldn't quite identify. "You're good at being invisible, aren't you, Sophia?" The use of my first name sent another flutter through me that I ruthlessly suppressed. "It's a useful skill in my position. I imagine it is." He leaned back in the chair, which creaked under his weight. "What made you apply to work here? Most accountants with your credentials could work anywhere. Law firms, corporate offices. Instead, you chose a nightclub owned by a man with a reputation." I'd been prepared for this question 3 years ago during my interview. I had my answer ready, bland, and believable. The pay was better than other offers I'd received, and the work seemed straightforward. Straightforward. Another humorless laugh. "Nothing about my businesses is straightforward, Sophia." The way he kept using my name felt deliberate, like he was claiming it somehow, marking it. I didn't like it. I didn't like the attention, the scrutiny, the way his presence in my small office was making it impossible to maintain my careful invisibility. "I need the records from Bellissimo because I'm selling it." He said it casually, as if commenting on the weather. "A buyer wants to review the financial history before making an offer." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral even as my mind raced. Bellissimo was one of his most successful operations. If the books I'd maintained weren't clean enough, if the buyer's forensic accountants found something suspicious. "The records are clean," I said quietly. "Everything is properly documented and categorized according to standard accounting practices." "I know they are." His gray eyes held mine. "You're meticulous. It's one of the things my HR manager noted when she hired you. Attention to detail, discretion, the ability to work independently without supervision. Those seemed like the qualities you'd want in an accountant." They were exactly what I wanted. He stood suddenly, moving, to examine the certificates on my wall, my accounting degree from a state school, my CPA license, a framed quote about integrity that I'd bought at a discount store, but now I find myself wondering what else I missed by not paying attention. His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I focused on pulling the final reports, organizing them into folders, anything to avoid responding to what felt like a test I didn't understand. "You're 26? he asked, reading from my degree certificate. 27. I graduated a year later than most. Why? The question was too personal, too intrusive, but I answered anyway, because you didn't refuse Dante Moretti. I worked full-time to pay for school. It took longer. No family support? No family. The words came out harsher than I intended. Sir, the reports are almost ready. Just a few more minutes. He turned from the wall to face me, and the intensity in his gaze made me shrink back slightly in my chair. No family, no social media, presence that I can find. No friends who visit you at work. You're a ghost, Sophia. Deliberately invisible. My hands stilled on the keyboard. Is there a problem with my work, Mr. Moretti? No. He moved closer to my desk, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy with an undertone of smoke. That's what bothers me. Your work is impeccable. You're reliable, efficient, discreet. You should have been promoted years ago. Instead, you're still here in this basement office, working 10-hour days for a salary that's probably half what you could make elsewhere. I'm satisfied with my position. Are you? He leaned forward, placing both hands on my desk, bringing his face level with mine. The blood on his knuckles was drying now, dark rust against his olive skin. Or are you hiding? My breath caught. He was too close, too observant. Those gray eyes were seeing things I'd worked so hard to keep buried. The reports are ready. My voice was barely above a crescent whisper. I hit print, grateful for the noise of the printer starting up, filling the tense silence between us. Dante straightened, moving to collect the pages as they printed. He reviewed them quickly, his eyes scanning the numbers with a speed that suggested he understood financial documents better than most people gave him credit for. Perfect, as expected. He gathered the reports into a neat stack. Thank you, Sophia. I apologize for keeping you so late. It was a dismissal. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt something uncomfortable twist in my chest as he moved toward the door. Mr. Moretti? The words escaped before I could stop them. He paused, turning back with one eyebrow raised in question. The blood on your hands. There's a first aid kit in the break room if you need it. For the first time since entering my office, Dante Moretti smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but it transformed his face from coldly handsome to something far more, dangerous, devastatingly attractive. I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine. The blood isn't mine. He said it matter-of-factly, as if discussing a minor inconvenience. Good night, Sophia. I'll see you Monday. And then he was gone, his footsteps receding down the hallway, leaving me alone in my small office with my heart racing and my carefully constructed invisibility, feeling suddenly dangerously fragile. I sat frozen at my desk for a full 5 minutes after he left, trying to process what had just happened. In 3 years, Dante Moretti had barely acknowledged my existence. Now he knew my name, my age, details about my life that I'd kept deliberately vague. He'd seen me, and something in his gray eyes when he looked at me had suggested that now that he'd finally noticed I was there, he wasn't going to be able to unsee me. The thought should have terrified me, should have sent me running for the door, updating my resume, looking for a new position somewhere far away from the past, dangerous gravity of Dante Moretti's attention. Instead, as I gathered my things and locked up my office, I found myself touching the spot on my desk where his hands had rested, where he'd leaned close enough that I could have counted the flecks of darker gray in his eyes. For 3 years, I'd been invisible, safe in my obscurity. But as I walked through the empty club toward the exit, past the pristine bar and the dance floor that would be packed with beautiful people in just a few hours, I couldn't shake the feeling that my safety had just been irrevocably shattered. And the most terrifying part wasn't that Dante Moretti had finally noticed me. It was the small, reckless part of myself that was glad he had. The weekend passed in a blur of anxiety and restless sleep. I told myself that Monday would be normal, that Dante's late-night visit to my office had been an anomaly, a moment of curiosity that would fade once he returned to his usual concerns. The books for Bellissimo would satisfy his buyer, and he'd go back to forgetting I existed. I told myself this repeatedly, right up until I walked into my office Monday morning and found a different desk. Not just different, upgraded. The cheap pressboard furniture I'd been using for 3 years had been replaced with a solid wood executive desk, matching filing cabinets, and a leather office chair that probably cost more than my monthly rent. My old computer had been swapped for a top-of-the-line system with dual monitors. Even the harsh fluorescent lighting had been replaced with softer, warmer fixtures. A small card sat on the new desk, heavy cream cardstock with just 2 words written in bold, angular handwriting. You're welcome. No signature. None needed. My hands trembled as I set down my coffee, staring at the transformed space. This was worse than being noticed. This was being thought about. Dante Moretti had spent time over the weekend considering my comfort, my work environment. He'd authorized what must have been thousands of dollars in upgrades for an accountant he'd barely acknowledged until Friday night. Why? The question haunted me through the morning as I tried to focus on work. I jumped every time I heard footsteps in the hallway, convinced it would be him, coming to explain or demand or ask more intrusive questions about my life. But Dante didn't appear. Instead, around noon, his HR manager knocked on my door. Miss Chen, Mr. Moretti wanted me to inform you that you've received a raise, effective immediately. She handed me a revised contract, her expression professionally neutral. 20% increase. Plus you're now eligible for the executive benefits package, health insurance, dental, retirement matching, and 2 weeks paid vacation. I stared at the numbers on the contract, my mind reeling. This was more money than I dared to hope for when I applied here 3 years ago. More money than most accountants in similar positions made. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. The HR manager, Patricia, I remembered, shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Moretti felt your compensation didn't reflect the scope of your responsibilities. He's asked that you also begin attending the weekly executive meeting starting next Monday. He wants his financial team more integrated into operational decisions. Financial team. As if there was a team and not just me, alone in my basement office, processing numbers that told stories I pretended not to understand. I see. Thank you. I took the contract with numb fingers, and Patricia left me alone with my beautiful new office and my spiraling thoughts. This was how it started. This was how invisible people got pulled into spotlights they never wanted. Dante Moretti was seeing me now, and apparently, he'd decided I was worth investing in. The smart thing would be to refuse, to maintain my boundaries, keep my head down, go back to being the ghost I'd been comfortable being. Instead, I signed the contract. The rest of the week followed a strange new pattern. I never saw Dante directly, but evidence of his attention appeared everywhere. My favorite coffee order, vanilla latte with oat milk, started appearing on my desk each morning, still hot, as if someone had timed its delivery perfectly to my arrival. Security guards who'd never acknowledged me before nodded respectfully when I passed. Even the club's manager, Vic, who'd always treated me like part of the furniture, stopped by to discuss the bar inventory budget as if my opinion suddenly mattered. I was being integrated, elevated from the basement shadows into the visible machinery of Dante's organization, and with each small gesture, each sign of his attention, I felt my carefully constructed invisibility crumbling. By Friday, I'd almost convinced myself I could adapt to this new reality, that being seen wasn't dangerous, that Dante's interest was purely professional, a good businessman recognizing an undervalued asset and correcting his oversight. Then Friday night happened. I'd stayed late again, working on quarterly reports that were due the following week. It was past 9 when I finally saved my work and began shutting down my computer. The club was opening in an hour, and already I could hear the bass thump of the DJ doing sound checks, the clatter of the bar staff prepping for the night. I gathered my things and headed for the employee exit, taking the back stairs that led from the administrative wing to a side door that opened onto an alley. It was my usual route, quick, quiet, away from the crowds that would soon fill the club's main entrance. The alley was dark, illuminated only by a single security light halfway down its length. I'd walked this path hundreds of times, comfortable in the familiar shadows. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, there were voices. I froze at the top of the stairs, my hand on the door handle, as 2 figures came into view near the dumpsters. One I recognized. Immediately Luca, one of Dante's enforcers, a brutal man with dead eyes and scarred knuckles who handled the boss's less savory business. The other was younger, maybe early 20s, his face bloodied and tear-streaked as he begged. Please, I can get the money. I just need more time. 2 weeks. That's all I'm asking. Luca's fist connected with the young man's jaw, a sickening crack that echoed off the alley walls. You've had 3 months, mister. Moretti doesn't extend credit to people who can't pay. I should have retreated. Should have gone back inside, found another exit, pretended I'd seen nothing. Instead, I stood paralyzed, watching as Luca hit the young man again, and again, each blow more vicious than the last. Stop! The word tore from my throat before I could stop it. Luca's head whipped toward me, his expression transforming from cold efficiency to shock. In 3 years, I'd perfected the art of never being somewhere I shouldn't be, of never witnessing anything that might make me a liability, until now. Miss Chen. Luca's voice was carefully neutral, but his eyes held a warning. You should go home. The young man on the ground was sobbing now, blood streaming from his nose and mouth. He couldn't have been more than 22, his face still holding traces of boyish softness beneath the damage. He said he can get the money. My voice shook, but I forced the words out anyway. 2 weeks. That's not unreasonable. Luca's expression hardened. Mr. Moretti's policies aren't your concern. Everything involving his finances is my concern. I had no idea where the words were coming from. What insane impulse was making me challenge a man who'd probably killed people? I manage his accounts. I can arrange a payment plan. That's not how this works. Then maybe it should be. I was shaking now, adrenaline flooding my system. Breaking his hands won't get you the money he owes. A structured payment plan will. Luca stared at me for a long moment, his scarred face unreadable. Then he pulled out his phone, keeping his eyes on me as he made a call. Boss? We have a situation. Miss Chen is here. Yes, sir. In the alley. She's suggesting we handle the Marco situation differently. A pause as he listened. Understood. He hung up and jerked his chin toward the young man on the ground. Pick him up. Take him inside. Mr. Moretti wants to see all of you. My stomach dropped. This was it, the moment my intervention transformed from reckless courage into a potentially fatal mistake. You didn't involve yourself in Dante Moretti's business. You didn't question his enforcers or suggest alternative methods for his operations. And you certainly didn't do it in front of witnesses. Luca hauled the young man Marco to his feet, half dragging him toward a service entrance I'd never used. I followed on numb legs, my mind racing through the possible consequences of what I'd just done. We took an elevator I didn't know existed, ascending to the top floor of the building that housed Impero. I'd never been up here before. The administrative offices were all on the basement level, safely removed from whatever happened in the private areas above the club. The elevator opened onto a hallway that screamed wealth and power. Hardwood floors, art that was probably original and worth more than I'd earn in a lifetime. Recessed lighting that cast everything in a warm, expensive glow. Luca led us to a set of double doors at the end of the hall, knocked once, and entered without waiting for a response. Dante's private office was exactly what I would have expected: massive, intimidating, dominated by floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Chicago skyline. The man himself sat behind an enormous desk, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars that told stories I'd never want to hear. Those cold gray eyes lifted from whatever he'd been working on, taking in our little procession with an expression I couldn't read. Miss Chen. His voice was dangerously soft. Luca tells me you have concerns about my business practices. My mouth went dry. I don't. That's not I just thought. You thought what? He stood, moving around his desk with that predatory grace I'd noticed in my office last week. That you could interfere with an enforcement action? Question my methods in front of my people? The young man said he could get the money. I forced myself to meet his gaze, even as every instinct screamed at me to look away. If Luca breaks his hands, he won't be able to work. If he can't work, he can't pay what he owes. Dante moved closer, stopping just inches away. I could smell his cologne again, that woodsy scent mixed with something sharper now. Anger, maybe, or danger. You're an accountant, Sophia. He said my name like a weapon. You count money. You don't make decisions about how I run my organization. I understand that, Mr. Moretti, but from a purely financial standpoint. From a purely financial standpoint, he interrupted, his voice dropping even lower. You just made yourself a problem. Because now Marco here thinks he has an advocate. And now Luca looks weak in front of a debtor because he was second-guessed by someone who works in the basement. Shame flooded through me. He was right. I'd undermined his authority, disrupted his system, inserted myself into a world I'd promised to stay blind to. I apologize. I shouldn't have interfered. No. Dante's eyes held mine, something complicated moving through their gray depths. You shouldn't have. But you did. So now we need to figure out what to do about it. He turned to Marco, who was still sobbing quietly, supported by Luca's firm grip. You say you can get the money? Yes, sir. My uncle has it. I just need to wait for him to return from... I don't care about the details. Dante cut him off. You have 1 week. Not 2. 7 days to produce every dollar you owe, plus interest. If you're even an hour late, Luca won't break your hands. He'll break your legs. Understood? Marco nodded frantically. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I won't be late. I swear. Get him out of here. Dante waved dismissively, and Luca dragged the still babbling young man from the office, leaving me alone with Dante Moretti and the consequences of my reckless intervention. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken tension. I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs, could hear the blood rushing in my ears. That was remarkably stupid, Sophia. Dante moved back to his desk, leaning against it with his arms crossed. You put yourself in danger. You undermined my authority. You involved yourself in business that has nothing to do with your position here. I know. I'm sorry. Are you? His head tilted slightly, studying me with that unsettling intensity. Because from where I'm standing, you didn't look sorry. You looked self-righteous. Like you thought you knew better than me how to handle my own people. Heat flooded my cheeks. That wasn't my intention. Then what was your intention? Because 3 years you've been invisible. 3 years you've kept your head down, avoided attention, done your job without question. Then I notice you, and suddenly you're interfering with enforcement actions in alleyways? I had no answer for that. No explanation for what had possessed me to speak up, to insert myself into a situation that was none of my business. Maybe, Dante continued, pushing off from his desk to close the distance between us again. You're not as comfortable being invisible as you pretend to be. His words hit too close to something I didn't want to examine. I took a step back, needing space, needing to re-establish the boundaries that were dissolving with every moment I spent in his presence. I should go. I've caused enough problems for one night. No. The single word stopped me in my tracks. You don't get to walk. I'm away that easily, Sophia. You involved yourself in my business. Now you need to understand the consequences. What kind of consequences? Fear spiked through me, sharp and cold. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Come here tomorrow night, 9 p.m. I want you to see what happens when people cross me. Maybe then you'll understand why I do things the way I do. It was a test. A punishment, maybe, or a lesson. Whatever it was, I knew refusing wasn't an option. Yes, sir. Good. He moved back to his desk, effectively dismissing me. And Sophia, the next time you feel compelled to save someone, remember that some people don't want to be saved. They just want to survive. I fled his office, my heart racing and my mind spinning. Everything I'd built over 3 years, my careful invisibility, my safe obscurity was crumbling. And the worst part was, I had no one to blame but myself. I spent Saturday in my small studio apartment, trying to convince myself not to show up at Impero. That night, every rational part of my brain screamed that going back was dangerous, that accepting Dante's invitation, or was it a command, would drag me deeper into a world I'd spent 3 years avoiding. But by 8:30, I was standing in front of my closet, staring at clothes that all seemed wrong for whatever the night would bring. Not that I had many options. My wardrobe consisted of practical work attire and comfortable weekend wear, nothing appropriate for a nightclub where the dress code probably required designer labels I couldn't afford. I settled on the only remotely acceptable outfit I owned, black pants that actually fit instead of hanging loose, and a deep burgundy blouse that my college roommate had given me years ago, claiming the color brought out the warmth in my skin tone. I left my hair down for once, the dark brown waves falling past my shoulders, and applied minimal makeup with trembling hands. Looking at my reflection, I barely recognized myself. For 3 years, I'd hidden behind oversized clothes and severe hairstyles. Now, dressed like an actual person instead of a ghost, I looked different, younger, vulnerable in a way that made my stomach clench with anxiety. The Uber ride to Impero took 20 minutes, each one amplifying my certainty that this was a mistake. But I got out of the car anyway, approaching the club's main entrance, where a line of beautiful people waited behind velvet ropes, hoping to be deemed worthy of entry. I'd never used this entrance before. My world was the employee door in the alley, the basement office, the shadows. Standing here among the glittering crowd felt like stepping onto a stage I'd never auditioned for. The bouncer, a mountain of a man named Dimitri, who I'd seen exactly twice in 3 years, spotted me immediately. His eyes widened slightly before he spoke into his radio, then lifted the velvet rope. Miss Chen, Mr. Moretti is expecting you. The people in line stared as I walked past. Them, whispers following in my wake. Who is she? How did she skip the line? Must be someone important. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity. I was nobody. An accountant who counted other people's money and kept secrets she pretended not to understand. But as Dimitri led me through the club's main floor past the packed dance floor, where bass thundered and lights strobed in hypnotic patterns, I felt the weight of attention in a way I'd never experienced before. We took the same elevator from last night, ascending to Dante's private floor. But instead of going to his office, Dimitri led me to another set of doors that opened onto a space I hadn't known existed. It was a private lounge, all dark leather and dim lighting, with windows overlooking the club's main floor below. A dozen people occupied the space, men in expensive suits, women in designer dresses that probably cost more than my monthly rent. They all turned as I entered, their conversations dying as curious eyes assessed the unfamiliar face. And there, at the center of it all, sat Dante Moretti. He looked different tonight, still devastating in a black suit and crisp white shirt, but more relaxed than I'd seen him. A glass of amber liquid whiskey probably rested in his hand, and he was laughing at something the blonde woman beside him had said. She was beautiful in that effortless way some people were, all long legs and perfect features, her hand resting possessively on his arm. Something uncomfortable twisted in my chest at the sight, something I had no right to feel. Dante's eyes found mine across the room, and his smile faded into something more complicated. He said something to the blonde that made her expression tighten, then stood and crossed to where I hovered near the entrance, feeling desperately out of place. Sophia. My name on his lips sent an involuntary shiver through me. You came. You told me to. The words came out sharper than intended, defensive. I gave you an invitation, not an order. His eyes moved over me, taking in my changed appearance with an intensity that made my skin heat. You look different. Is that a problem? No. Something flickered in his gaze, appreciation maybe, or possession. It's just unexpected. I'm not used to seeing you outside your armor. The observation was too accurate, too perceptive. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly feeling exposed. You wanted me to see something, I said, changing the subject. What? Dante's expression hardened slightly. The reality of the world you stepped into last night when you interfered. He gestured to the windows overlooking the club floor. Come. I followed him to the glass, acutely aware of the curious stares from the others in the room. Below us, the club pulsed with life, hundreds of people dancing, drinking, losing themselves in the music and lights. What do you see? Dante asked, standing close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. People having fun? People having fun? Look closer. His voice dropped, intimate despite the crowd around us. Table 7, by the bar. The man in the blue shirt. I found him mid-30s, handsome, drinking alone. What about him? He owes me $50,000, gambling debts. He's here tonight spending money he doesn't have, thinking I won't notice. Dante's tone was conversational, but something cold lurked beneath it. See the couple dancing near the DJ booth? They run a protection racket in Chinatown without my permission. They think being in public makes them safe. My stomach clenched as understanding dawned. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand that every person in this club, every transaction, every interaction exists because I allow it to. The bartenders, the security, the DJs, all of them work for me. The liquor, the lights, the very air they breathe in here is controlled by me. He turned to face me fully, his gray eyes burning with intensity. And when people forget that, when they think they can take what's mine or disrespect my authority, there are consequences. As if on cue, I saw Luca and 2 other men moving through the crowd below, converging on the man in the blue shirt. They surrounded him casually, professionally, then escorted him toward a side door. The man didn't resist, couldn't resist, not without causing a scene that would end badly for him. What will happen to him? I asked quietly. He'll be given a final warning. If he's smart, he'll find a way to pay what he owes. If he's not. Dante shrugged. Then he'll discover that my patience has limits. I should have been horrified. Should have been running for the door, updating my resume, putting as much distance as possible between myself and this world of casual violence and calculated intimidation. Instead, I found myself asking, and the couple? The ones running the protection racket? Dante's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. They'll be reminded that Chicago has rules. My rules. If they want to operate in this city, they pay tribute. If they don't. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. This is why you wanted me here tonight. I said slowly, realization dawning. To scare me. To remind me that I'm in over my head. Am I scaring you, Sophia? I turned to meet his gaze, surprised by the genuine curiosity in his question. Yes, but probably not in the way you intended. His eyes narrowed. Explain. You scare me because you notice everything. You see patterns, connections, threats that other people miss. It's what makes you powerful. I gestured to the club below. You don't scare me because of the violence or the control. You scare me because I understand it. Dante's expression shifted, surprise flickering across his features. You understand it. The numbers don't lie, Mr. Moretti. I've been processing your accounts for 3 years. I know how your empire works, even if I pretended not to see it. The restaurants that never seem to fill but always turn a profit. The real estate deals where the purchase prices don't match market value. The cash deposits that appear in carefully calculated amounts designed to avoid triggering federal reporting requirements. I held his gaze steadily. I understand your business better than you probably realize. I just chose not to acknowledge it. The silence that followed was deafening. Around us, I could sense the others in the lounge watching, waiting, trying to understand the dynamic between their boss and the unremarkable accountant he'd summoned. You're full of surprises, Sophia Chen. Dante's voice was soft, dangerous. First you interfere with my enforcement actions. Now you're admitting to knowledge that could make you either invaluable or incredibly dangerous to me. My heart hammered against my ribs. Which one am I? I haven't decided yet. He stepped closer, invading my space in a way that should have felt threatening but instead sent heat pooling low, in my stomach. What do you want, Sophia? Because people don't admit to knowing things they shouldn't know unless they want something. I want. The words caught in my throat. What did I want? Safety? To go back to being invisible? Or something else, something I'd been denying even to myself? Dante, the blonde woman from earlier, appeared at his elbow, her voice carrying an edge of possessiveness. Marco is downstairs. He says he needs to speak with you urgently. Dante's jaw tightened in annoyance, but he nodded. Tell him I'll be down in 5 minutes. The woman's eyes cut to me, assessing and dismissive in a single glance. Should I tell him you're busy with your accountant? The way she said accountant made it sound like an insult, like I was something insignificant that had wandered into territory where I didn't belong. Tell him I'm with someone important, Dante replied coolly. He can wait. The blonde's expression tightened, but she nodded and moved away, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. Who is she? I asked before I could stop myself. Dante's lips curved into a genuine smile, the first I'd seen from him. Jealous, Sophia? No, just curious about the organizational structure. The lie was transparent, and we both knew it. Her name is Isabella Rossi. Her family has connections to the East Coast operations. We have a mutually beneficial arrangement. The careful phrasing told me everything I needed to know. Isabella wasn't just some woman he was seeing. She was part of the business, part of the complicated web of alliances and obligations that governed his world. I should go, I said, suddenly feeling foolish for coming here, for thinking this meant something it clearly didn't. You have business to attend to. Dante's hand shot out, catching my wrist before I could turn away. His touch sent electricity racing up my arm, and from the way his eyes darkened, he felt it too. Stay. It wasn't a command this time. It was a request. I want to show you something else. I've seen enough. Please. The word seemed to cost him something. This man who was accustomed to demanding rather than asking. 1 more hour. Then if you want to leave, I'll have my driver take you home. Against every rational instinct, I nodded. Dante led me out of the lounge and down a hallway I hadn't seen before, away from the club's noise and chaos. We stopped at a door marked Private, which he unlocked with a keycard I hadn't noticed him carrying. The room beyond was unexpected. A library, of all things, lined floor to ceiling with books. Leather chairs sat before a fireplace that crackled with real flames, and a bar cart in the corner held expensive liquor and crystal glasses. This is my real office, Dante said, closing the door behind us. The sudden silence was jarring after the club's constant bass thrum. The one upstairs is for show, for meetings with people I need to intimidate. This is where I actually work. I moved slowly around the room, drawn to the bookshelves. The collection was eclectic business texts next to classic literature, philosophy alongside history, everything organized with the same meticulous attention to detail I recognized from his financial records. "You're surprised," Dante observed, moving to the bar cart. "Whiskey? Or are you more of a wine person?" "I don't usually drink." The admission felt vulnerable somehow. "But whiskey is fine." He poured 2 glasses, neat, and handed me one before settling into one of the leather chairs. After a moment's hesitation, I took the other. "My father built this room," Dante said, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "He believed that a man who only knew violence was just a thug. To build an empire, you needed to understand people, psychology, history. He made me read everything in this room before I turned 20. It was the most personal information he'd ever shared, and I sensed it was a test of some kind, an offering of vulnerability to see if I'd reciprocate. "What happened to him?" I asked quietly. "He was killed when I was 23, rival family. I'd been groomed to take over eventually, but not that soon." His expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the old pain beneath it. I had to prove myself quickly, make examples of the people responsible, establish that I wasn't my father, but I was just as dangerous. "That's why you're so controlled," I said, the pieces clicking together. "Why you notice everything. You had to, or you wouldn't have survived." Dante's eyes met mine with surprise and something that looked like recognition. "Exactly. In my world, the man who misses details is the man who ends up dead." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "That's why it bothered me so much that I fell her. I missed you for 3 years. You were right there, processing my most sensitive information, and I never saw you. I worked very hard to make sure you didn't. Why?" The question was soft but intense. Why go to such lengths to be invisible? It was my turn to offer vulnerability, to match his confession with my own. I took a sip of the whiskey, letting it burn down my throat, gathering courage. "Because being seen gets you hurt." The words came out quieter than I intended. When I was 21, I made the mistake of being visible, of standing out. I had a boyfriend who seemed perfect, charming, attentive, successful. Then he became possessive, then controlling, then violent. Dante's entire body went rigid, his hand tightening on his glass. "Did he?" "He put me in the hospital twice before I finally managed to leave. But leaving didn't stop him. He followed me, called constantly, showed up at my work. It took 3 years and a restraining order that he violated twice before he finally gave up." I met Dante's gaze, seeing fury burning in those gray depths. "So I learned to be invisible, to not attract attention, to fade into the background where no one would notice me enough to get obsessed. Is he still a threat?" Dante's voice was deadly calm, which somehow made it more terrifying. "No, he moved to California 4 years ago. Last I heard, he'd gotten married, had a kid. He's someone else's problem now." "What was his name?" The question was casual, but I knew what he was really asking, what he was offering. "It doesn't matter anymore," I said firmly. "That part of my life is over. I dealt with it. I survived it. By making yourself invisible." Dante studied me with those 2 perceptive eyes. "By hiding all of this," he gestured at me, "behind ugly clothes and a forgettable face. Except your face isn't forgettable, Sophia. And now that I've actually looked at you, I can't understand how I ever missed it." Heat flooded my cheeks at the unexpected compliment. "You're just saying that because what? Because I feel guilty for not noticing you sooner? Because I'm trying to manipulate you?" He set down his glass and stood, crossing to my chair in 2 long strides. "I'm saying it because it's true. You're beautiful, and intelligent, and brave enough to interfere when you see something wrong, even knowing the consequences." I stood as well, needing to reestablish some distance, some control over a situation that was spiraling rapidly away from anything I understood. "This is a bad idea, Mr. Moretti." Dante. He was too close now, close enough that I could see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes. "When we're alone, you call me Dante. Dante, then." His name felt dangerous on my tongue. Whatever this is, it's a bad idea. I work for you. There are power dynamics, professional boundaries. Fuck the boundaries." The vulgarity was shocking coming from him, this man who was always so controlled. "Do you think I care about professional ethics? About what people might say? You should care. Isabella is none of your concern." His hand came up to cut my cheek, his touch surprisingly gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. "Isabella and I have an arrangement that benefits both our families. That's all it is. That's all it's ever been. And what am I? The question escaped before I could stop it. What is this? Dante's thumb traced the curve of my cheekbone, his eyes searching mine with an intensity that stole my breath. I don't know yet. All I know is that I've spent the last week unable to stop thinking about you. About the way you stood up to Luca in that alley. About what else you might be hiding behind that careful mask you wear. I'm not hiding anything. The lie was automatic, self-protective. Liar. He said it almost affectionately. You're hiding everything, Sophia. You've built an entire life around not being seen. But I see you now. And I'm not going to be able to unsee you. His words echoed my own thoughts from a week ago, when he'd first appeared in my office. This was dangerous. This was exactly the kind of attention I'd spent years avoiding. But as Dante leaned closer, as his other hand came to rest on my waist, pulling me against the solid warmth of his body, I couldn't remember why being invisible had ever seemed like safety. Tell me to stop, he murmured, his breath warm against my lips. Tell me this crosses too many lines, and I'll walk away. I'll go back to pretending you're just my accountant, and you can go back to being invisible. I should have said it. Should have established the boundaries that would keep me safe. Keep my carefully reconstructed life intact. Instead, I tilted my face up to his and whispered, "Don't stop." Dante's mouth claimed mine with a hunger that stole what little breath I had left. His kiss was demanding, possessive, tasting of whiskey, and something darker that I couldn't name but found addictive anyway. My hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer even as some rational part of my brain screamed that this was madness. His hand slid into my hair, angling my head to deepen the kiss. I'd been kissed before, but never like this. Never with the kind of intensity that made everything else fade away until there was nothing but his mouth on mine. His body pressed against me, the racing of two hearts that had no business beating in sync. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against mine. I need you to understand something, Sophia. I don't do halfway. If we start this, if you let me in, I won't be satisfied with just being your boss. I won't be satisfied with casual. I'm not built that way. What are you saying? I'm saying that I want you. Not just physically, though fuck, I definitely want that. His hands tightened in my hair, emphasizing his words. I want to know everything you've been hiding. Every fear, every secret, every part of yourself. You've kept locked away. And once I know it, once you give it to me, I don't give things back. It should have terrified me, this declaration of intent from a man who controlled an empire through fear and force. Instead, something inside me that had been locked away for years stirred to life, drawn to the fierce possessiveness in his voice. I'm not a thing to be owned, Dante. No. He pulled back far enough to meet my eyes, his expression serious. You're not, but you could be mine, if you chose to be. There's a difference. What about Isabella? I'll end it tonight. The arrangement with her family is political, not personal. They'll understand. He studied my face, reading whatever he saw there. But I need to know this is what you want, Sophia, because once we cross this line, there's no going back. Not for me. I thought about my studio apartment, my carefully ordered life, 3 years of invisibility that had kept me safe but also kept me from living. I thought about the accountant I'd been yesterday, hiding in her basement office, pretending not to see or feel or want anything beyond mere survival. And I thought about the woman I saw in the mirror tonight, the one who'd walked into a nightclub and challenged a Mafia boss, who'd kissed him back with a passion I didn't know I was capable of feeling. I want this, I said, the words feeling like jumping off a cliff into darkness. I want you. God help me, but I do. Dante's smile was triumphant and tender at once. God won't help you now, Amori. You're mine, and I take care of what's mine. He kissed me again, slower this time, thorough, like he was memorizing the taste of me. When his phone buzzed insistently in his pocket, he growled in frustration but answered it anyway. What? How long? Fine. Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes. He ended the call and turned back to me, regret and frustration warring in his expression. I have to deal with something. A shipment arrived early, and there are complications, but this conversation isn't over. I should go anyway, I said, trying to regain some semblance of composure. It's late, and I need to process everything that just happened. Dante's hand cupped my face again, his thumb brushing across my still swollen lips. My driver will take you home. Tomorrow, we'll talk. About us. About what this means. But Sophia? He waited until I met his eyes. Don't run. Don't talk yourself out of this tonight when you're alone and thinking too much. What we just started, it's real. Don't let fear tell you otherwise. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He walked me out of the library and handed me off to a security guard I didn't recognize, giving quiet instructions in Italian. As I was led through the club toward the exit, I caught a glimpse of Isabella watching from the VIP lounge, her expression murderous. I'd made an enemy tonight, I realized. Several, probably, by daring to capture Dante Moretti's attention. But as his sleek, black Mercedes pulled up outside, and the driver opened the door with respectful deference, Miss Chen, Mr. Moretti has asked me to ensure you arrive home safely. I couldn't bring myself to regret it. For the first time in years, I felt alive, seen, wanted, and terrifyingly, wonderfully, no longer invisible. Sunday morning arrived with autumn sunlight streaming through my apartment windows and the persistent buzz of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. I reached for it with sleep-heavy limbs, my body still humming with the memory of Dante's kiss, his hands in my hair, the possessive certainty in his voice when he'd called me his. 3 missed calls, all from an unknown number. My stomach clenched with anxiety as I sat up, pulling the covers around myself like armor. Had I made a catastrophic mistake last night? Had the cold light of morning made Dante regret his declaration? Or worse, had Isabella convinced him that an accountant from the basement wasn't worth the political complications she represented? The phone buzzed again. This time, I answered. Sophia. Dante's voice, rough with what sounded like exhaustion, sent warmth flooding through me despite my anxiety. You didn't answer. I was asleep. It's barely 8. I know. I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure you got home safely last night. A pause, filled with something that sounded like uncertainty from a man who probably never felt uncertain about anything. And to make sure you didn't spend the night talking yourself out of what happened between us. Despite everything, I smiled. You know me pretty well for someone who just noticed I existed a week ago. I'm a fast learner. I could hear the smile in his voice now. And I pay attention to what matters. You matter, Sophia. The simple declaration made my chest tight. Where are you? You sound tired. Still at the club. The shipment complications turned into a bigger problem than expected. I've been dealing with it all night. His voice dropped. Lower. More intimate. I'd much rather have been dealing with you. Heat flooded my cheeks even though he couldn't see me. Dante, have dinner with me tonight. My place. Not the club. Just us. I want to talk about what this means. What we're going to do about it. What about Isabella? The name felt bitter on my tongue. Already handled. I spoke with her and her father this morning. The arrangement is over. She wasn't pleased, but she understands that business is business. Something harder entered his tone. Though I should warn you, her displeasure might extend to you. Isabella doesn't handle rejection well. A chill ran through me, remembering the murderous look on the blonde woman's face last night. Should I be worried? No. The certainty in Dante's voice was absolute. You're under my protection now. Anyone who touches you answers to me. Isabella knows that. So does everyone else in my organization. Under my protection. The phrase should have felt patronizing, like I was some helpless thing that needed guarding. Instead, it felt like a promise. A claim. What time tonight? I asked, surprising myself with how easily I accepted his invitation. 7. I'll send a car. He paused, and I could hear voices in the background, someone calling his name urgently. I have to go. But Sophia, wear something comfortable. Tonight isn't about impressing anyone. It's about you and me figuring out what we are. He ended the call before I could respond, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts and the certainty that my carefully ordered life had just been irrevocably disrupted. I spent the day trying to distract myself with mundane tasks, laundry, grocery shopping, cleaning an apartment that was already meticulously organized. But my mind kept returning to Dante, to the heat in his eyes when he'd kissed me, to the possessive way he'd touched me, like I was something precious in his. It was dangerous to let myself want this. Want him. Men like Dante Moretti didn't fall for invisible accountants. They had arrangements with beautiful, connected women like Isabella. They had one-night stands with models and actresses whose faces graced magazine covers. They didn't have real relationships with mousy, damaged women who'd spent 3 years hiding in basement offices. But as 7 o'clock approached and I stood in front of my closet once again, I couldn't deny the flutter of excitement mixing with my anxiety. Dante had said to wear something comfortable, so I chose jeans, my best pair, dark and fitted, and a soft cashmere sweater in deep green that I'd bought on sale years ago and never worn because it felt too pretty, too attention-grabbing. Tonight, I wanted to be seen. The car arrived precisely at 7. Not the Mercedes from last night, but a different vehicle still expensive and sleek, but less conspicuous. The driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, introduced himself as Marcus. "Mr. Moretti wanted me to tell you that you're under no obligation tonight, Miss Chen. If at any point you wish to leave, I'll take you home immediately. No questions asked." The gesture touched me more than it probably should have. Even in his absence, Dante was giving me choices, making sure I knew this was my decision. "Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate that." The drive took us away from the city center, through neighborhoods that grew progressively more exclusive, until we arrived at a gated property in Lincoln Park. The house mansion really was beautiful but understated, brick and stone with mature trees providing privacy from the street. Marcus walked me to the door, which opened before we could knock. Dante stood there, and my breath caught at the sight of him. He'd showered and changed since our phone call, wearing jeans and a simple black t-shirt that revealed the corded muscles of his arms and the edge of a tattoo I'd never known he had. His hair was still damp, and without the armor of his suits, he looked younger, more accessible. "Thank you, Marcus." Dante's eyes never left me as he spoke to his driver. "I'll call when Miss Chen is ready to leave." Then we were alone, standing in the foyer of his home, and the weight of last night's kisses hung heavy in the air between us. "You look beautiful," Dante said softly, his eyes moving over me with unconcealed appreciation. "I like you in green. It brings out the gold in your eyes." I didn't know my eyes had gold in them. "That's because you don't look at yourself the way I look at you." He stepped closer, his hand coming up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear in a gesture that was becoming familiar. "Come, I made dinner. You cook?" I couldn't hide my surprise as he led me through the house, all hardwood floors and comfortable furniture that spoke of actual living rather than designer, staging toward a kitchen that smelled incredible. My mother was Italian. She insisted I learn before she died. Dante moved to the stove where something simmered, in a large pot. It's nothing fancy, pasta carbonara, but it's edible. The domesticity of the scene was surreal. Dante Moretti, crime boss and ruler of Chicago's underworld, cooking pasta in his kitchen on a Sunday night. For me, "Can I help with anything? Open the wine?" He gestured to a bottle on the counter, already uncorked. "And then sit. Tell me about your day." It was such a normal request, such a perfectly ordinary thing for someone to ask. But as I poured wine into the 2 glasses he'd set out and settled onto a bar stool at the kitchen island, I realized how rarely anyone asked me about my day, how rarely anyone cared about the mundane details of my life. "I did laundry," I said, feeling foolish. "Groceries. Cleaned my apartment even though it was already clean. Basically, I tried very hard not to think about last night and failed miserably." Dante's lips curved into a smile as he stirred the pasta. "I spent my morning dealing with a territorial dispute between 2 of my captains, then had a very uncomfortable conversation with Isabella's father about why I was ending our arrangement. Then I had an even more uncomfortable conversation with my consigliere about how getting involved with my accountant was a terrible strategic decision that could compromise the entire organization." My stomach dropped. "What did you tell them?" "That I don't give a fuck about strategic decisions where you're concerned." He plated the pasta with practiced ease, bringing both dishes to the small table by the kitchen windows. "Sit with me." The pasta was perfect, creamy and rich with just the right amount of pancetta and fresh pepper. We ate in comfortable silence for a few moments before Dante spoke again. "I need you to understand what being with me means, Sophia. Not just the danger, though that's real, and we'll discuss it, but the visibility. You've spent 3 years being invisible. If you're with me, that ends. People will know who you are. They'll watch you, talk about you, try to use you to get to me. Is this the part where you try to talk me out of this?" I set down my fork, meeting his gaze. "Because it sounds like you're building a case for why this is a bad idea. I'm being honest about what you're signing up for." His expression was serious, almost grim. "I won't lie to you, Sophia. Not about this. Being with me will change your life in ways you can't predict. Some good, some difficult. You need to know that before we go any further." I took a sip of wine, gathering my thoughts. "You're right. I have been invisible for 3 years. And before that, I was invisible in a different way, small, scared, trying not to provoke the man who said he loved me but hurt me anyway. I'm tired of being invisible, Dante. I'm tired of hiding. That's not the same as being ready for the spotlight that comes with me. No, I agreed. But maybe I'm ready to find out if I can handle it. With someone who actually sees me instead of trying to erase me. Something fierce and possessive flashed in Dante's eyes. I see you, Sophia. Every damn day now. I see you. And I can't stop. Then stop trying to protect me from yourself and just... I gestured helplessly, frustrated by my inability to articulate what I wanted. Just be with me. Let me be with you. We'll figure out the rest. Dante stood, crossing to my side of the table in 2 long strides. His hand cupped my face, tilting it up to meet his burning gaze. You're going to wreck me, you know that? You're going to completely destroy the carefully controlled life I've built. Is that a bad thing? I don't know yet. His thumb traced my lower lip, and heat pooled low in my stomach, but I'm willing to find out. When he kissed me this time, it was different from last night's desperate hunger. This was slower, deeper. A claiming that felt like a promise. His hand slid into my hair, holding me exactly where he wanted me, as his tongue explored my mouth with thorough possession. I melted into him, my hands fisting in his t-shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, becoming something primal and consuming that made everything else. The uneaten pasta, the wine, the dangerous world waiting outside these walls fade into insignificance. Dante lifted me from the chair, my legs wrapping around his waist instinctively as he carried me from the kitchen. I should have protested, should have slowed this down, but I couldn't bring myself to care about should when what I wanted was right here, solid and warm and mine. He laid me on a couch in what appeared to be a study, more books, leather furniture, a massive desk, and covered my body with his. The weight of him, the heat, the way he kissed me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered, it was intoxicating. Tell me to stop, he murmured against my lips, even as his hands slid beneath my sweater, warm against my skin. Tell me this is too fast and I will. Don't stop. The words were becoming a mantra, between us. Please, Dante, don't stop. His mouth moved to my neck, finding spots that made me gasp and arch against him. My hands explored the planes of his back, feeling the muscles shift beneath his shirt, discovering the edges of that tattoo I'd glimpsed earlier. What does it say? I asked breathlessly as his lips traced my collarbone. Italian proverb. His teeth grazed my skin, making me shiver. Chi vuole vivere e star bene prenda il mondo conviene. Roughly translated, he who wants to live well takes the world as it comes. Do you believe that? Dante lifted his head, his gray eyes dark with desire and something deeper. I used to think I controlled everything, that if I planned carefully enough, anticipated every threat, I could bend the world to my will. His hand came up to cradle my face with surprising gentleness. Then you walked into my club a week ago looking like you wanted to be anywhere else, and suddenly nothing I'd planned mattered anymore. I didn't. Walk into your club. I've been working there for 3 years, but I didn't see you until last week. His thumb traced my cheekbone. That's what matters. The moment I saw you, everything changed. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed insistently. Dante's jaw tightened in frustration, but he pulled it from his pocket, glancing at the screen. Whatever he saw there made his expression darken dramatically. Fuck. He sat up, running a hand through his hair. I'm sorry. I have to take this. He stood, moving to the far side of the study as he answered in rapid Italian. I couldn't understand most of what he was saying, but his tone, cold, lethal, sent chills down my spine. This was the other Dante, the dangerous one who ruled an empire through fear. When he ended the call several minutes later, his expression was grim. What's wrong? I asked, sitting up and straightening my sweater with trembling hands. Marco, the kid you saved in the alley last week, he's dead, executed. Someone left his body outside Bellissimo with a note. Dante's voice was carefully controlled, but I could see the fury radiating from him. The note had your name on it. The blood drained from my face. My name? Not your full name. Just the accountant. Someone knows you interfered. Someone is sending me a message. He crossed to me, kneeling so we were at eye level. Sophia, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Have you noticed anyone following you? Strange phone calls? Anything unusual in the past week? I tried to think, but my mind was spinning with the horror of Marco's death. That young man, barely more than a boy, who'd begged for more time, dead because I'd interfered. No, nothing. I go to work and come home. That's it. I don't go anywhere else. What about today, when you went shopping? I didn't notice anyone. But Dante, I'm not trained to notice things like that. I'm an accountant, not. The words caught in my throat. Oh God, he's dead because of me. Because I interfered. No. Dante's hands gripped my shoulders firmly. He's dead because someone wants to send me a message. Because they're using you to demonstrate that they can reach what's mine. This isn't your fault, Sophia. How can you say that? If I hadn't interfered, if I'd just minded my own business, then Marco would have been killed eventually anyway. Men like him, who borrow from people like me without the means to pay it back, they don't have good outcomes. His expression was hard, unforgiving. But the person who did this, who left that note with your name, they're declaring war. And they're using you as the opening move. Fear turned my blood to ice. Who would do that? Who would? I have theories. But I need to make sure you're safe first. He stood, pulling out his phone again. You can't go back to your apartment. Not until I know who's behind this and deal with them. Deal with them, I repeated numbly, understanding what he meant. Yes. He held my gaze unflinchingly. I'm going to find whoever did this, whoever killed Marco and threatened you, and I'm going to make sure they never threaten anything of mine again. Do you understand what I'm saying, Sophia? I did. He was going to kill them, probably brutally, definitely without mercy. And the terrifying thing was, I couldn't bring myself to feel horrified by that fact. Where will I go? I asked instead. Here, with me. I have security, cameras, people loyal to me who will die before they let anyone hurt you. He pulled me to my feet, his hands gentle despite the steel in his voice. I know this isn't how you wanted tonight to go. I know this is moving faster than either of us planned. But I meant what I said last night. You're mine now, Sophia. And I protect what's mine. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Dante's entire body tensed, one hand moving to the small of his back where I now realized he kept a gun. Stay here, he commanded, and something in his tone made me obey without question. He left the study, and I heard voices in the foyer, his and someone else's, male, speaking in urgent Italian. After several minutes, Dante returned with another man I'd never seen before. Late 50s, silver-haired, with sharp eyes that assessed me with clinical precision. Sophia, this is Roberto, my consigliere, the man who advised me that getting involved with you was a terrible strategic decision. Despite the gravity of the situation, Dante's lips quirked slightly. Roberto, this is Sophia Chen, my accountant, and, as you've already pointed out, my terrible strategic decision. Roberto's expression didn't change, but something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. Miss Chen, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. What did you find? Dante asked, his hand finding mine and holding it firmly. The kill was professional, single shot to the back of the head, execution style. The body was positioned deliberately for maximum visibility. Roberto's voice was matter of fact, discussing murder like a business transaction. The note was typed, no fingerprints, but the paper is Italian, expensive, the kind used by old families. Vitelli, Dante said, and the name came out like a curse. Most likely. Marco's original debt was to one of their operations. When he came to you for better terms, they lost face. Roberto's eyes cut to me, and when Miss Chen convinced you to extend his deadline, they saw an opportunity. To make me look weak, Dante finished, his jaw tight with fury. To suggest that I've gone soft. That a woman, an accountant, has more influence over my decisions than business sense. Exactly. Roberto pulled out his phone, showing Dante something I couldn't see. But there's more. We've confirmed that Isabella met with Antonio Vitelli yesterday. The same night you ended your arrangement with her. My stomach dropped. She's working with them? She's motivated by spite, Dante corrected coldly. I embarrassed her by ending our arrangement for someone she considers beneath her. Now she's feeding information to my enemies. Information about me, I said quietly. Yes. Dante's hand tightened on mine. Which means she knows where you live, where you work, your routines, anything she's observed over the past few months when I wasn't paying attention. The reality of the situation crashed over me. I wasn't just Dante's lover or his accountant anymore. I was a target, a weakness that his enemies would exploit. I should leave, I said suddenly, pulling my hand from his. Go far away where they can't use me against you. You said it yourself, being with you makes me visible, puts me in danger. Well, I'm in danger now, and it's going to get you killed trying to protect me. No. The word was absolute, uncompromising. You're not leaving. You're not running. We're past that now, Sophia. People are going to die because of this, I said desperately, feeling the walls closing in. Marco is already dead. How many more before? The people who are going to die are the ones who threatened you. Dante's voice was lethal calm. The Vitellas have been looking for an excuse to move against me for years. They're using you as justification, but this war was coming regardless. At least now I have something worth fighting for. Roberto cleared his throat diplomatically. Perhaps Miss Chen should hear the full situation before making any decisions. What full situation? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. Dante and Roberto exchanged a look before Dante spoke. The Vitellas have been consolidating power on the south side for the past year. They want to expand into my territory, take over my operations. Killing Marco and implicating you, it's a declaration of intent. They're saying they can reach anyone in my organization, even someone I've personally shown favor to. So what do we do? I asked, proud that my voice barely shook. We go to war, Dante said simply. We show them that threatening you was the biggest mistake they could have made, and we make sure everyone in Chicago understands that anyone who touches what's mine doesn't live to regret it. The cold efficiency in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something else entirely, a fierce gratitude that this dangerous, powerful man was willing to wage war to keep me safe. How long will this take? I asked quietly. Days. Maybe a week. Dante's expression softened as he looked at me. I know this isn't the romantic evening I promised you. I know asking you to stay here, to essentially go into hiding while I handle this, isn't fair. But Sophia, he cupped my face in both hands. I cannot lose you. Not now. Not when I've just found you. I covered his hands with mine, making a decision that would change everything. Then show me. Show you what? Who you really are. Not the man who makes pasta or kisses me like I'm precious. The other one. The one who runs an empire and destroys his enemies. I held his gaze steadily. If I'm going to be with you, truly be with you, I need to see all of it. Not just the parts you think I can handle. Dante's eyes darkened with something that looked like pain. You don't know what you're asking. Yes, I do. I'm asking you to trust me with the truth. With all of it. I stepped closer, refusing to back down. You said you protect what's yours. Well, I'm choosing to be yours, Dante. But I need you to let me choose it fully, with my eyes open. Roberto made a sound that might have been approval. She's braver than you gave her credit for. I've always known she was brave, Dante replied, his eyes never leaving mine. I just didn't want her to have to be. Not like this. Too late, I said softly. Marco's death made that choice for us. So now you need to decide. Do you trust me enough to let me see who you really are? Or are you going to keep trying to protect me from reality? The silence that followed felt endless. Then Dante nodded once. A decision made. Roberto, call the captains. Tell them we're moving up the timeline. I want everyone at the warehouse in 2 hours. He turned back to me. Get your things. You're coming with me. Where? His smile was cold, dangerous, nothing like the warmth he'd shown me earlier. You wanted to see who I really am, Sophia. Tonight, you're going to get your wish. And as I followed him from the study, Roberto trailing behind with his phone already pressed to his ear, making calls that would set events in motion, I realized that the invisible accountant I'd been was truly gone. In her place was someone I didn't fully recognize, yet someone brave enough or foolish enough to walk willingly into the darkness beside Dante Moretti. Someone who'd chosen to be seen, even knowing the cost. The warehouse was exactly what I'd expected from every crime movie. I'd never wanted to see myself in industrial, isolated, surrounded by empty lots that ensured privacy for whatever business happened within its walls. Several black SUVs were already parked outside when we arrived, and hard-looking men in expensive suits nodded respectfully as Dante emerged from his car. But their eyes lingered on me with undisguised curiosity and something that might have been concern. The accountant. The woman who'd started a war. Inside, the warehouse had been converted into a functional space, shipping containers lining the walls, a clear central area, with folding chairs arranged in a loose semicircle, and in the corner, something covered by a tarp that I deliberately didn't look at too closely. Dante's hand found the small of my back, a possessive gesture that every man in the room noted. Stay close to me, he murmured, his voice low enough that only I could hear. Don't speak unless I tell you to. These men need to see that you're under my protection. but they also need to see that you know your place. The phrasing should have rankled, should have triggered my hard-won independence. Instead, I understood it for what it was. A strategy to keep me safe in a room full of dangerous men who might see me as weakness. I understand, I whispered back. More men filtered in over the next 10 minutes, until roughly 20 were assembled. I recognized a few faces from the club Luca, looking grimmer than ever. Vic, the manager who now avoided my eyes, and several others whose names I'd processed on payroll but never thought to attach to actual people. These were Dante's soldiers, his captains, the infrastructure of his criminal empire. Finally, Dante stepped into the center of the semicircle, and every conversation died immediately. The air itself seemed to change, charged with the kind of authority that couldn't be faked or learned. It was simply there, radiating from him like heat. "Most of you know why we're here," Dante began, his voice carrying easily through the space. "Marco DeLucci was executed tonight outside Bellissimo. The Vitellis are claiming responsibility, though they were smart enough not to put it in writing." A murmur ran through the assembled men, anger and unease mixing. "They left a note," Dante continued. "A threat directed at someone under my protection, someone they seem to think represents weakness in our organization." His eyes cut to me briefly before returning to his men. "They're wrong. With respect, boss." One of the older captains spoke up, his eyes also flickering to me. "Getting involved with your accountant showing her favor, it sends a message that you're distracted, that you've gone soft." "Does anyone in this room think I've gone soft?" Dante's voice was deadly quiet. Silence. Absolute and total. "Let me be very clear about something," Dante said, moving slowly through the semicircle, making eye contact with each man. "What I choose to do in my personal life is my business. But when someone threatens what's mine, whether it's territory, money, or people, that becomes all of our business. The Vitellis think they can move against us by targeting someone I care about. They're about to learn that was a fatal miscalculation." "What's the play?" Luca asked, his scarred face eager. "We hit 3 of their operations simultaneously. The gambling house in Cicero, the distribution center in Bridgeport, and Antonio Vitelli's social club in Little Italy." Dante pulled out his phone, displaying what looked like building schematics. "We make it loud. We make it public. We make sure every family in Chicago understands that threatening anyone under my protection has consequences." "And Antonio himself?" another captain asked. "He's mine." The possessive certainty in Dante's voice sent chills down my spine. "He ordered Marco's death. He approved the threat against Sophia. He dies by my hand." The men nodded, satisfied with this justice. In their world, some insults required personal resolution. "What about Isabella Rossi?" Vic asked. "Word is she's been feeding information to the Vitellis." Dante's expression turned glacial. "Isabella made her choice when she chose spite over sense. Her father will handle her. I've already spoken with him. He understands that her actions have compromised the relationship between our families." I understood what he wasn't saying, that Isabella's father would punish her in ways I probably didn't want to imagine. In this world, betrayal came with severe consequences, even for daughters of powerful men. "When do we move?" Luca asked. "Tonight. 2 hours." Dante glanced at his watch. "Roberto has the assignments. You know your roles. Any questions?" There were none. These were professional soldiers, men accustomed to following orders without hesitation. "One more thing," Dante said as the men began to disperse. "Miss Chen is off limits, permanently. Anyone who touches her, threatens her, even looks at her wrong, answers to me personally. Spread that word to everyone in our organization. She's family now." Family. The weight of that word in this context was staggering. In Dante's world, family wasn't just blood. It was sacred, protected, avenged. The men filed out, several casting final curious glances my way before disappearing into the night to prepare for war. Soon only Dante, Roberto, Luca, and I remained in the warehouse. "You should have left her at the house," Roberto said quietly to Dante. "This isn't something she needs to see." "She asked to see," Dante replied, his eyes finding mine across the space. "And I'm done protecting her from reality. She's choosing this with her eyes open." "Is she?" Roberto's gaze was sharp as it settled on me. "Miss Chen, do you understand what tonight means? What we're about to do?" I lifted my chin, refusing to show the fear churning in my stomach. "You're going to destroy the people who threatened me. People are going to die, probably violently." "And you're comfortable with that?" Roberto pressed. Was I? Could I really stand beside a man who ordered deaths as casually as dinner? Could I accept that blood would be spilled tonight in my name? I thought about Marco, dead at 22, because he'd borrowed money he couldn't repay, about the cold calculation in the Vitellis' strategy to use me as a weakness, about the fact that in this world, mercy was seen as vulnerability, and vulnerability got you killed. No, I said honestly. I'm not comfortable with it. I don't think I'll ever be comfortable with it, but I understand it. And I understand that in your world, not responding to threats makes you a target. So if this is what needs to happen to keep Dante and me safe, then I accept it. Something that might have been respect flickered in Roberto's eyes. She'll do, he said to Dante. She's practical. That's good. I've always known she was practical, Dante replied, crossing to stand beside me. His hand found mine, lacing our fingers together. It's one of the things I noticed about her, that and her ability to see the truth of things without flinching. I'm flinching on the inside, I admitted quietly. I'm just good at hiding it. Dante's lips curved into a small smile. That's what makes you perfect for this life. The ability to maintain composure even when everything inside you is screaming. He turned to Roberto and Luca. Give us a moment. The two men retreated to the far side of the warehouse, leaving us with the illusion of privacy. Are you sure about this? Dante asked, his voice dropping to that intimate register he used when we were alone. Because once tonight happens, once I go to war with the Vitellis in your name, there's no going back. You'll be tied to me in ways that can't be undone. Every enemy I have will see you as a target. Every ally will expect you to play your role. What role is that? The woman who made Dante Moretti vulnerable, he said bluntly. The accountant who somehow captured the attention of a man who wasn't supposed to care about anyone. They'll watch you, test you, try to figure out if you're genuine or just playing an angle. And what do you want me to be? His hand came up to cut my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone in that gesture that was becoming achingly familiar. I want you to be exactly what you are, brave and practical, and stubborn enough to interfere when you see something wrong. I want you to be the woman who chose me, even knowing what I am. A criminal, I said softly. A killer. A man who orders deaths like other people order coffee. Yes, he didn't flinch from the assessment. All of those things. But also a man who will burn down the world to keep you safe. Who will wage war in your name. Who will give you everything you've ever wanted if you'll just stay beside me. My heart hammered against my ribs as I looked up at this dangerous, a complicated man who'd somehow become essential to me in the span of a week. I'm terrified, I admitted. Of this world, of what loving you might cost me, but I'm more terrified of going back to being invisible, of never knowing what this could be. Then stay. His forehead pressed against mine, his breath warm on my lips. Stay beside me tonight. Watch me be who I am, and then decide if you can live with it. Before I could respond, Luca called out from across the warehouse. Boss, they're ready. Dante's hand tightened on mine briefly before he let go, his expression shifting from tender to lethal in the space of a heartbeat. Let's end this. What followed was a masterclass in controlled violence and strategic warfare. Dante positioned me in one of the SUVs with two guards, whose only job was to keep me safe while he coordinated the simultaneous attacks through phone calls and encrypted messages. I watched it unfold through the car's window, and the reports that filtered back, fires erupting at the gambling house, police sirens wailing as they responded too late to help, the distribution center raided and stripped of millions in product, Antonio Vitelli's, the social club, surrounded by Dante's men, until the older mobster had no choice but to surrender himself. Through it all, Dante remained coldly efficient, ordering his forces with the precision of a general commanding an army. This was the man who'd built an empire from his father's ashes. This was the real Dante Moretti. And when they brought Antonio Vitelli to the warehouse bloodied but alive, defiant even in defeat, I knew I was about to see the darkest part of the man I'd chosen. Dante stood before the older man, his expression carved from ice. You killed Marco DeLucci. A lesson, Antonio spat blood, to show you that you've grown weak, that a woman has made you soft. Let me show you exactly how soft I've become. Dante's voice was terrifyingly calm as he pulled out a gun, black, deadly, an extension of his hand. You threatened someone under my protection. In my world, there's only one response to that. You'll start a war, Antonio warned. My family will come for you. Let them come. Dante chambered around with mechanical precision. Maybe they'll be smarter than you were, I should have looked away, should have closed my eyes against what was coming, but I'd asked to see, and Dante had warned me. So I watched as he raised the gun, watched as he pulled the trigger without hesitation, watched as Antonio Vitelli crumpled to the concrete floor. One shot, clean, final. And then Dante turned to his assembled men, the gun still in his hand, his expression utterly without remorse. Let the other families know this is what happens when you threaten what's mine. Spread the word, wage war if you must, but understand that I will win. No one challenged him, no one questioned. They simply nodded and moved to handle the cleanup with practiced efficiency. Dante walked to the SUV where I waited, his eyes searching mine as he opened the door. Are you okay? Such an absurd question. Was I okay after watching him execute a man? After witnessing the machinery of his criminal empire in action? After seeing exactly how far he would go to protect what he'd claimed as his? No, I said honestly. I'm not okay. I'm probably never going to be okay again. Something like pain flickered across his face. I warned you, but I'm staying. I interrupted, reaching for his hand even though there was blood on his cuff. I'm staying because I understand now. I understand what you are and what being with you means, and I'm choosing it anyway. Why? The question was raw, vulnerable. Why would you choose this? Choose me? I pulled him closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in his gray eyes, the exhaustion beneath his cold exterior. Because for 3 years, I was invisible and safe and completely alone. And then you saw me, Dante. Not the armor I wore or the person I pretended to be. You saw the real me beneath it all, and you wanted her. I still want her, he said fiercely. I'll always want her. Then take me home, I whispered. Take me home and show me that you're more than just this. That the man who makes pasta and kisses me like I'm precious is still in there beneath the blood and violence. Dante's hand came up to cradle my face, and despite everything, the gunshot still echoing in my ears, the body being wrapped in plastic behind us, the blood on his cuff, his touch was infinitely gentle. Always, he promised. For you, I'll always be both. The monster and the man. You'll never have to choose between them because you're getting all of me. And as he helped me from the SUV and led me to his personal car, as we drove away from the warehouse and the evidence of the war he'd waged in my name, I knew that my old life, my safe, invisible existence was truly over. In its place was something terrifying and exhilarating and utterly unprecedented. I was Sophia Chen, the accountant who'd captured the heart of Chicago's most dangerous man. And somehow, impossibly, I was exactly where I wanted to be. 3 months later, winter had settled over Chicago with a vengeance. But inside Dante's Lincoln Park mansion, everything was warm. I stood in the kitchen, our kitchen now, since I'd officially moved in 6 weeks ago, watching snow fall outside while I worked on the month-end reports for Dante's legitimate businesses. My laptop sat on the counter next to a half-empty cup of coffee that had gone cold while I focused on reconciling accounts. Strong arms wrapped around my waist from behind, and I felt Dante's lips press against the curve of my neck. Still working? He murmured against my skin. Some of us have jobs, I replied, though I leaned back against him, savoring his warmth. Your restaurants don't balance themselves. Take a break. His hands moved to close my laptop gently but firmly. I have something for you. I turned in his arms, raising an eyebrow. It's not my birthday. I don't need an occasion to give you gifts. He pulled a small box from his pocket velvet, jewelry-sized, instantly making my heart race. Open it. Inside was a key. Simple, unremarkable, made of ordinary metal. A key? I asked, confused. Dante's lips curved into that rare, genuine smile I'd come to cherish. To Bellissimo. I'm promoting you. You're no longer just my accountant handling the books from home. You're going to be the financial director for all my legitimate operations, which means an office at the restaurant, a real title, staff working under you. My breath caught. Dante, that's what you deserve, what you should have had from the beginning. His hand came up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. You've been invisible for too long, amore. It's time the world saw what I see. Tears pricked at my eyes, happy tears this time, not the terrified ones I'd shed that first night at the warehouse. You're sure about this? Making me that visible in your organization? I've never been more sure of anything. His expression turned serious. The Vitellis are gone. Isabella's family has made peace with us. Chicago knows you're untouchable. It's safe now, Sophia. Safe for you to step out of the shadows. I kissed him then, pouring 3 months of gratitude and fear and desperate love into it. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were dark with desire and possession. "I love you," I said the first time I'd spoken the words aloud, though they'd been hovering between us for weeks. Dante's smile was blinding. "I know. I've known since the night you watched me kill Antonio Vitelli and still chose to come home with me." He kissed me again, softer this time. "Ti amo, Sophia. You're the best terrible strategic decision I've ever made." I laughed, remembering Roberto's warning from months ago. Does he still think that? Roberto? No. Now he thinks you're the best thing that ever happened to me. Dante's arms tightened around me. He's right. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in white. Inside, wrapped in the arms of the most dangerous man in Chicago, I felt safer than I'd ever felt in my carefully invisible life. Because I wasn't invisible anymore. I was seen, known, chosen, and I was finally, terrifyingly, wonderfully home. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.